What if time wasn't just measured, but remembered? What if deep in the heart of old Constantinople, as the empire glittered under starlight and shadows, a man toiled night and day, not just to build a clock, but to preserve the soul of a civilization? Tonight, dear traveller, you'll journey through cobbled streets and golden domes into a hidden workshop where time ticks with secrets, sorrow, and legacy. This is not just a story. This is a tale of destiny wrapped in gears and stars. Welcome to the Clockmaker of Constantinople. Get comfortable. Close your eyes. Let history whisper you to sleep. Chapter 1. The Ticking Silence. In the heart of old Constantinople, where the scent of roasted chestnuts mingled with the salt-kissed breeze from the Bosphorus, there stood a small, weathered clock shop, nestled between a spice merchant's stall and a calligrapher's kiosk. It bore no sign above its door, no grand windows to display its works. Only a single brass pendulum swung gently in the glass of its entryway, polished daily, without fail, catching the morning sun like a shard of time itself. The shop belonged to Yusuf Efendi, a quiet man with silver in his beard and a gaze that seemed always fixed just behind the present moment, as though watching the echoes of things long past. His fingers, nimble despite the years, worked daily over tiny screws, golden gears, and delicate springs. Time in his hands was not measured. It was crafted. Each morning before dawn, Yusuf rose from his cot above the shop, performed his ablutions, and lit a single oil lamp in the workshop. The city outside still slept, its domes and minarets silhouetted against the slow bluing sky. Only the distant cooing of pigeons and the far-off gurgle of a fisherman's boat disturbed the early hush. Inside the shop, however, time moved differently. On every shelf sat a clock, each one unique, some encased in hand-carved walnut, others fashioned from hammered brass or mother-of-pearl inlay. There were clocks shaped like mosques, with domed tops and minarets as chimes. Others bore stars and celestial symbols, echoing the Ottoman fascination with the heavens. All of them ticked softly, steadily, like 100 heartbeats overlapping in a gentle orchestra. And yet, at the very centre of the workshop stood a clock that did not tick. It was tall, elegant, and unfinished, its face blank, its arms still. Unlike the others, it bore no numerals, only intricate filigree and an inscription in Ottoman Turkish carved delicately around the bezel. The words read, "Time does not pass, it waits." Yusuf would sit before it for hours, touching its casing, inspecting the mechanism, then pushing his tools aside with a sigh. 20 years he had worked on this one, and yet it refused to be born. Not for lack of skill, for Yusuf was the finest horologist in the city, perhaps the empire. His pieces graced the mansions of viziers, the chambers of scholars, and even the walls of the Sultan's lesser palaces. But this clock, this one, was different. It was not for sale, not for display. It had been a promise once, and promises, like time, were not so easily forgotten. That morning, as the first light spilled through the shutters, Yusuf wound the small brass carriage clock on his workbench. It chirped sweetly, its chime echoing faintly through the room like a bell lost in fog. He smiled faintly. It was a good piece. Balanced, precise. He reached for his notebook, its leather softened by decades of use. The page held a list of repair jobs. A cracked pendulum in Galata. A slow-running tower clock in Üsküdar. A private request from a French ambassador seeking a water clock with Eastern charm. He checked the list, dipped his pen in ink, and paused. A knock echoed from the front door. 3 short raps, deliberate, not impatient. Unusual. Customers rarely came this early. Yusuf rose, wiped his hands on a cloth, and opened the door. There stood a young boy dressed in royal colours, navy vest, gold sash, a scroll tucked under his arm. He bowed. "Are you Yusuf Efendi, the master of clocks?" he asked, voice steady but respectful. "I am," Yusuf replied, his eyes narrowing slightly at the boy's attire. "And you are?" "I bring word from the palace. The Sultan's court requests your presence. You are to meet with Muzaffer Hoka, royal scholar and keeper of the celestial timepieces." Yusuf's brow furrowed. The name was familiar. Muzaffer Hoka was known in scholarly circles, a man of wide reading and precise tastes. But the palace had not called upon Yusuf in nearly a decade. "What does he seek?" he asked. The boy offered the scroll. Yusuf opened it slowly. The script was elegant, formal. "Master Yusuf Efendi, His Majesty requests a timepiece unlike any other. One that does not simply mark the hours, but the memories they contain. You are to attend Muzaffer Hoka at the Imperial Library within 7 days. Time, as always, is in your hands." The signature bore the mark of the Grand Vizier's office. Yusuf folded the scroll and stared past the boy into the sunlight-drenched street, his heart steady but not untouched. The clock that had waited for 20 years seemed to stir, quietly, in the silence behind him. "Tell the scholar," Yusuf said at last. "I will come." Chapter 2. Whispers in the Bazaar. The day following the royal summons dawned slowly over Constantinople, soft light filtering through the latticed windows of Yusuf Efendi's modest home. The city was stirring. The gentle clatter of wooden carts, the distant call of merchants opening their shops, and the muffled hum of early prayers drifting from minarets. Yusuf sat at his small wooden table, the scroll from the palace unopened but resting nearby. His stepping out into the warm morning, Yusuf inhaled the mingled scents of saffron, cardamom, and freshly baked simit. The sun cast long shadows beneath the rows of colourful awnings, and merchants shouted greetings in a medley of tongues: Turkish, Greek, Armenian, and Arabic, a testament to the city's rich tapestry. As Yusuf moved through the narrow lanes, the clinking of coins and laughter blended with the rustle of silk scarves and the whisper of old secrets. Children darted between stalls, chasing one another with wild abandon, while elderly men gathered around tables, playing backgammon beneath the shade of fig trees. Near the corner, where the spice merchants displayed their vibrant piles of turmeric and sumac, Yusuf's eyes caught sight of an old friend, Cemil, a bookseller whose shop was a trove of forgotten tales and ancient wisdom. Cemil looked up from his scrolls, eyes bright behind wire spectacles. "Yusuf Efendi," he called, beckoning with a smile. "I heard the news. The palace has summoned you again." Yusuf nodded, feeling the weight of the summons settle on his shoulders. "It has been many years since I last walked those marble halls." Jamil's smile faded just a touch. "Do you remember the last time? The clock you built for the vizier's daughter, how it played her lullaby as the stars emerged. A warmth stirred in Yusuf's chest. I do. She was a child then, now a woman. No doubt. And what became of you after? Jamil asked softly. Yusuf looked away, the memories flickering like candlelight. That clock was my heart's labour, but some promises are hard to keep. The bustle of the bazaar seemed to pause for a moment, as if sharing in the quiet reverence of his words. Then the world resumed its rhythm, the pounding of a distant drum, the clatter of a merchant's cart, the murmur of haggling voices. As the sun climbed higher, Yusuf continued his stroll, thoughts weaving between the past and the task ahead. The palace awaited, a place of grandeur and mystery, where the threads of time itself might be held in delicate balance. The city whispered its stories around him, and Yusuf listened, ready to add his own chapter to the endless tale of Constantinople. Chapter 3 of Gears and Ghosts. The soft clinking of tools and the faint aroma of aged cedarwood filled Yusuf Efendi's workshop as dusk settled over Constantinople. The city outside was now cloaked in twilight, the golden domes and minarets glowing faintly against the deepening indigo sky. Lamps flickered in windows, and the distant call to prayer echoed like a gentle heartbeat through the narrow streets. Inside, Yusuf sat before his unfinished masterpiece. The silent clock that had been his companion and burden for 2 decades. His weathered hands rested lightly on its cold brass frame, fingers tracing the intricate filigree that danced along the edges. This clock was unlike any other he had built. It was not just a device to mark hours, but a vessel to hold memories. Fragile moments. So Yusuf closed his eyes and let the memories wash over him. He remembered the day he first began crafting this clock. The promises whispered to a young bride whose laughter once filled the very walls. Layla. Her name was a melody that lingered in the corners of his mind. She had been the light of his life, a scholar's daughter with a mind as sharp as any sultan's advisor, and a spirit as free as the Bosphorus breeze. Together, they dreamed of a timepiece that could capture the soul of their city, the fleeting moments of joy, sorrow, and hope. But fate, as it often does, had other plans. Layla's sudden illness had torn through their lives like a winter storm, and the clock had become Yusuf's refuge, his way to hold on to what time was taking away. For 20 years, he had worked in silence, turning gears and tightening springs, trying to build a machine that could rewind the past, even if only for a moment. The shadows lengthened as Yusuf opened his eyes. His gaze settled on the tiny gear he held between thumb and forefinger. Yusuf smiled gently, the corners of his eyes crinkling. Thank you, Evren. Your hands are steady. I see in you the patience I once had. Evren placed the box on the workbench and hesitated. Do you think this clock will ever be finished? Or is it meant to remain a memory itself? Yusuf studied the boy's earnest face. Some clocks are not made to mark time, but to remind us why time matters. They worked side by side in comfortable silence. The ticking of the smaller clocks growing louder, filling the room with a symphony of moments past and present. Outside, the city's nocturnal rhythm continued. The soft chatter of late-night traders, the murmur of lovers walking beneath lantern light, and the distant howl of a lone wolf somewhere beyond the city walls. And in the heart of the workshop, the clock remained still, waiting patiently for the moment it would finally breathe life. Chapter 4: The Sultan's Commission. A week passed swiftly in the ebb and flow of Constantinople's streets, each day brushing Yusuf Efendi closer to the summons from the palace. The city's sounds seemed to pulse with new energy. The distant drums from the Topkapi courtyards, the excited chatter of merchants speculating on royal affairs, the flutter of silk against stone as noblemen walked past. Yusuf prepared carefully for the journey. He selected his finest robe, a deep indigo silk embroidered with subtle silver threads that caught the light only when he moved. It was modest, but befitting the invitation he had received, a silent testament to years of dedication. The morning he set out, the Bosphorus was cloaked in mist. The ferry carried him slowly across the shimmering water, past fishing boats and the great silhouette of the Hagia Sophia, its massive dome rising like a crown against the pale sky. Upon reaching the palace gates, Yusuf was met by a guard who led him through the labyrinthine corridors, richly adorned with tiles painted in blue and gold, intricate calligraphy winding along the walls like rivers of ink. The air was heavy with the scent of rosewater and burning amber. Finally, Yusuf was ushered into the library, a vast chamber filled with towering shelves of manuscripts, delicate maps, and celestial charts. At the centre sat Muzaffar Hoka, the royal scholar, his face framed by a sultan pepper beard and eyes sharp as the stars he studied. "Welcome, Master Yusuf," Muzaffar greeted warmly. "Your reputation precedes you. The Sultan himself has long admired your work." Yusuf inclined his head respectfully. "It is an honor to serve the Empire." Muzaffar motioned toward a carved table where several designs lay spread out. Sketches of clocks of ordinary and extraordinary, from water clocks to astronomical timepieces. "We seek a clock unlike any other," Muzaffar began. "One that does not merely mark the passage of hours, but one that can capture the very essence of time, the memories and moments that define us." Yusuf studied the sketches carefully. They were intricate, some depicting celestial movements with painstaking detail, others blending art and mechanics in ways Yusuf had only dreamed. "Is this clock meant to tell stories?" Yusuf asked quietly. "In a manner of speaking," Muzaffar replied. "The Sultan wishes for a timepiece that reflects the soul of Constantinople, its joys, its sorrows, its legacy." Yusuf's heart quickened. This was the challenge he had waited for. The opportunity to breathe life into the clock that had haunted his dreams for so long. "I accept," Yusuf said finally. "But such a task requires time, patience, and the wisdom of many hands." Muzaffar nodded thoughtfully. "You shall have all three. The palace will provide resources, and you may choose an apprentice to aid you." As Yusuf rose, the weight of his purpose settled firmly upon him. Outside the library's tall windows, the city stretched wide, a living mosaic of history and hope, waiting to be captured in the ticking of a single clock. Chapter 5: The Scholar and the Clock. The morning sun filtered gently through the ornate stained glass windows of the palace workshop, casting a kaleidoscope of colours across the cool marble floor. Yusuf Efendi stood by a broad carved wooden table, covered with blueprints, brass cogs, and delicate instruments, meticulously arranged as though in silent conversation. The air was tinged with the scent of cedarwood and fresh ink, mingling faintly with the fragrance of jasmine drifting from the palace gardens beyond. Beside him sat Evren, the apprentice Yusuf had carefully selected from among the bustling streets of Constantinople. Young and eager, with eyes bright and filled with curiosity, Evren leaned forward as Yusuf traced the intricate designs of the clock's inner workings with a slender ebony pointer. "The challenge before us," Yusuf explained, "is far beyond building a timepiece that merely counts the passing hours. This clock must measure something far more elusive, the very nature of memory." Evren's brow furrowed as he studied the delicate drawings. Memory? But how can gears and springs, things so mechanical, hold on to something so fragile, so intangible as memory? Yusuf smiled gently, his eyes crinkling with a lifetime of experience. "That, my young friend, is the very art of horology. We strive to give form to the formless, to shape the invisible threads that weave our lives." Their work proceeded under the watchful eyes of Muzaffar. "Time," Muzaffar said one afternoon, his voice quiet but firm, "is a river, ever flowing forward. Yet within the human soul, it flows differently. Moments of joy stretch wide like the calm seas, while moments of sorrow pass as fleeting as a summer breeze. Your clock must reflect this paradox, the fluidity and depth of our experience." Weeks turned slowly into months as Yusuf and Evren laboured over every intricate component. A tiny escapement shaped like a delicate crescent moon, a gear etched with the constellations of the Ottoman night sky, and springs wound with the precision of a master calligrapher's steady hand. Each piece was a labour of love, imbued with intention and care. At night, Yusuf's mind often drifted to Layla, his late wife. Her laughter, soft, bright, and full of life, seemed to echo through the quiet corners of the workshop. He remembered her as she was beneath the olive trees, reading poetry aloud, the words spilling like honeyed light in the warm afternoon. These memories were the true heartbeat of the clock, shaping its soul beyond mere mechanics. One evening, as the lanterns flickered in the gathering dusk and the city's lights twinkled like stars mirrored on the Bosphorus, Evren hesitated, breaking the comfortable silence. "Master Yusuf," he said softly, "may I ask, why does this clock mean so much to you? Why pour so much of your life into something so intangible?" Yusuf paused, the tools resting lightly in his hands as his gaze grew distant, touched with the weight of memory. "Because, Evren, time is all we truly have, but it is also the very thing we cannot hold. Every moment we cherish is lost the instant it passes. This clock is my attempt to grasp what slips through our fingers, to hold on to the moments that define us." Evren nodded, understanding blooming in his eyes. "Then we must make this clock worthy of your hope, and worthy of the city whose stories it will tell." Together, under the watchful glow of oil lamps, they continued to work late into the night. The rhythmic ticking of the smaller clocks filled the room, weaving a soft symphony of moments past and present. Outside, the city's nocturnal life thrummed gently, the distant murmur of night traders, whispered conversations of lovers beneath lantern-lit alleys, and the lonely howl of a wolf somewhere beyond the city walls. And yet, within the sanctuary of the workshop, the great clock remained silent, its heart still waiting to beat, patiently holding space for the moment it would finally come alive, breathing the soul of Constantinople into its gears. Chapter 6: Blueprints of the Past. The scent of parchment and ink filled the air as Yusuf Efendi settled at his workbench, surrounded by rolled scrolls and aged tomes borrowed from the palace library. The morning light filtered softly through latticed windows, casting a golden glow on the rich patterns of the silk draped nearby. The quiet hum of distant voices from the palace corridors seemed to settle like a gentle breeze, carrying whispers of centuries past. Before him lay the blueprints, not only of the clock he was crafting, but also of the centuries-old mechanisms that had inspired generations of artisans before him. Each curve, each notch was a legacy, a story encoded in metal and wood, carried across the ages by hands that had long since turned to dust. Yusuf unfurled a faded drawing depicting a water clock from the times of the Seljuk sultans, its channels and bowls designed to mark passing hours with graceful precision. Nearby, sketches of astrolabes and orreries, delicate machines that traced the heavens, spoke of an age when science and art were one, when scholars gazed upward to the stars with reverence and understanding. These inventions were more than tools. They were expressions of a civilization's soul, a testament to the minds that dared to measure the immeasurable. They were monuments not only of engineering, but of hope, that time itself might be understood, embraced, and even revered. Yusuf's fingers traced the lines tenderly, feeling a connection to those who had come before, to the engineers, the dreamers, the clockmakers who had laid the groundwork for his own work. He whispered a silent prayer to them, hoping to honor their legacy and to carry their vision forward. Evren watched quietly from his corner, his eyes wide with wonder, the flickering candlelight catching the eager glint in his gaze. Master, did they truly believe time was something they could understand? Something that could be tamed? Yusuf smiled, his gaze lifting with the wisdom of many years. They did not seek to conquer time, but to understand it, to live in harmony with its flow. Time is a river, ever moving and shaping us, but also shaped by our lives and the stories we create. As they studied the blueprints together, the workshop filled with the soft rustle of parchment and the scratching of quill on paper. Muzaffer Hocker entered, holding an ancient manuscript bound in weathered leather. His presence was steady, his eyes bright with the light of knowledge and reverence. These, he said, spreading the manuscript carefully on the table, are the wisdom of ages. They remind us that our work is part of a much larger story, one that stretches across empires and centuries. He unrolled the manuscript slowly, revealing intricate drawings of clocks and celestial instruments, crafted during the Ottoman Golden Age. The pages depicted a clock built for Sultan Ahmed I, adorned with carvings of tulips and stars, symbols of beauty, life's fleeting nature, and eternity. The Tulip Era was a time of wonder, Muzaffar explained softly. A blossoming of culture, art, and knowledge. Your clock, Yusuf Efendi, must carry that spirit forward, blending the precision of science with the poetry of existence. Yusuf nodded, feeling inspired anew. He dipped his pen carefully in ink and began drafting new sketches, incorporating delicate floral motifs intertwined with star patterns, symbols that whispered both the transient beauty of life and the infinite cosmos beyond. As the hours slipped past, Yusuf lost himself in the work, feeling the hands of time stretch and contract with each stroke of his pen. Outside, Constantinople thrummed with life, but within the palace walls, time slowed, honouring the sacred craft unfolding. Later, as twilight descended and the city's first stars began to twinkle above the domes and minarets, Yusuf held a finished blueprint close to his chest. He looked toward the window, where the night sky stretched wide and endless. "In every gear, every spring," he murmured, "there is a story waiting to be told." Evren smiled, a quiet vow in his eyes. "And we are the storytellers." The workshop filled with the quiet promise of creation, a moment suspended in time, ready to become history. Chapter 7: Mechanics of the Heart. The morning air in Constantinople held a soft chill as Yusuf Efendi made his way through the winding streets toward the palace workshop. The city was just stirring awake. Shopkeepers unrolled their carpets, merchants arranged gleaming brass lamps, and the scent of freshly baked bread mingled with the salty breeze from the Bosphorus. Yusuf's thoughts wandered back to the clock that awaited him, the silent heart of his life's work. It was more than gears and springs. It was an echo of his own soul, a fragile and intricate machine crafted not only with skill, but with love. Inside the workshop, the air was thick with the scent of oil and wood shavings. Light filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the scattered tools and unfinished parts. Evren, his young apprentice, was already at work, carefully assembling a tiny brass cog. "Master Yusuf," Evren greeted softly, eyes bright with eagerness, "I have finished the new escapement you designed. It should regulate the movement more smoothly." Yusuf nodded approvingly. "Good. Every small part holds the whole together. Just like the heart in a body. Each piece must work in harmony." He settled at his bench, opening the worn leather notebook where he kept his sketches and notes. Among the pages were designs inspired by the delicate filigree of Ottoman architecture, patterns that mirrored the arches and domes of the city itself. As Yusuf worked, his mind drifted to Layla, his late wife, whose laughter had once filled this very workshop. The memories came like a gentle tide, the way her eyes sparkled as she recited poetry, the softness of her touch, the warmth of her smile on cool evenings. The clock was more than a mechanism. It was a vessel of remembrance, a tribute to love and loss, to time's relentless march and the moments we try desperately to hold on to. Evren looked up from his task, sensing his master's quiet reverie. "Master, why do you pour so much of yourself into this clock? Why not simply finish it and move on?" Yusuf's gaze met the apprentice's. "Because this clock is not just for marking hours. It is a way to understand the beating heart beneath the surface of time. The moments of joy, sorrow, and hope that shape our lives. Without those, time is empty." They worked together through the morning, assembling tiny gears that clicked and spun with perfect precision. Yusuf taught Evren the delicate art of patience, the steady hands needed to coax life from cold metal. Outside, the city's pulse quickened. The calls of street vendors selling fresh figs and fragrant spices filled the air. The clatter of horse-drawn carts echoed against stone walls. The scent of jasmine floated from nearby gardens. Later that afternoon, Muzaffar Hodja entered the workshop, carrying a scroll heavy with celestial charts and star maps. His eyes shone with excitement as he spread the parchment across the table. "Master Yusuf, I have been studying the movements of the stars," he said, voice low and reverent. "The heavens themselves offer a rhythm, a pattern of time, both eternal and fleeting. Perhaps our clock should reflect this celestial dance." Yusuf nodded thoughtfully, tracing the intricate lines with his finger. Yes, the stars have long been mankind's guide. To capture their motion within this clock will be to connect our work to the cosmos, to remind us that time is both vast and intimate. They discussed the challenge of translating such vastness into the tiny mechanism of the clock, blending precision engineering with poetic symbolism. As dusk settled over the city, the workshop grew quiet. Yusuf carefully assembled a complex gear system, its parts interlocking with a smoothness that spoke of years of experience and the careful balance between science and art. The young apprentice watched with admiration. "Master, I hope one day to create something as beautiful as this." Yusuf smiled, his eyes soft with pride. "You will, Evren. Remember, the most important thing is not speed or skill alone. It is the heart you put into your work. That is what makes a clock truly alive." Outside, the first stars appeared, shimmering like jewels above the ancient city. Yusuf glanced toward the window, feeling a profound connection to the past and the future, to the people who had shaped this place, and to those who would one day hear the gentle ticking of his clock. The night deepened, but within the workshop, time itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting, watching, ready to be transformed by the mechanics of the heart. Chapter 8: Echoes of the Empire. The soft golden light of dawn bathed Constantinople's rooftops as Yusuf Efendi and Evren stepped into the bustling streets near the palace. The city was alive with history, ancient walls whispering tales of empires past, and the mingling voices of traders from far-off lands, weaving a tapestry of languages and customs. Their destination was the Imperial Archives, a vast repository of knowledge, where scholars preserved the written memory of the empire. It was said that within those walls lay secrets of technology, art, and science that had shaped civilizations. Yusuf carried a carefully wrapped parcel, blueprints and samples of his clockwork designs, destined for review by the chief archivist, a man known for his meticulous eye and deep respect for tradition. This was a necessary step. The clock was not merely a creation of craft, but a statement to the empire's enduring spirit. As they navigated narrow alleyways, Yusuf's mind drifted to the grand history that surrounded them. The Byzantine mosaics that once graced the Hagia Sophia, the Ottoman sultans whose courts were centers of learning and art, the traders who had traveled the Silk Road bringing ideas and goods from distant realms. It is a city of echoes, Yusuf mused aloud. Each stone, each street carries voices of those who came before. Evren nodded, and it is our task to listen, to carry those echoes forward in our work. Inside the archives, they were greeted by the chief archivist, an elderly man with silver hair and keen eyes that seemed to see into the past itself. He examined Yusuf's designs carefully, tracing the fine lines with a practiced hand. "These designs honor our traditions," the archivist said slowly. "They show reverence to the past while embracing the future." He pulled from a shelf a weathered manuscript detailing the construction of an ancient clock built during the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent. The pages bore delicate illustrations of gears, wheels, and celestial indicators, accompanied by poetry praising the harmony of the cosmos. Yusuf studied the manuscript with quiet awe. Such craftsmanship is a reminder that time is more than measurement. It is a symphony of nature and spirit. The archivist smiled. "Precisely. Your work will join this lineage, preserving our heritage and inspiring generations to come." With their visit complete, Yusuf and Evren wandered the streets as the sun climbed higher, taking in the sights and sounds of a city forever poised between past and present. They stopped by a fountain where children played, their laughter carrying on the breeze like a melody through the ancient stones. Yusuf felt a profound sense of purpose. His clock was more than a machine. It was a bridge, a way to honor history while marking the endless flow of life. As evening shadows lengthened, they returned to the workshop, ready to continue their delicate dance of gears and dreams. Chapter 9. The Sultan's Secret. The grand corridors of Topkapi Palace shimmered in the afternoon light, the marble floors gleaming beneath the weight of centuries. Rich tapestries adorned the walls, depicting scenes of conquest and grace, while the faint scent of rosewater mingled with the aroma of spiced incense. Yusuf Efendi, with his measured steps, was led through these hallowed halls by a quiet attendant, the soft echo of their footsteps blending with the distant call of a ney flute. Yusuf's heart, usually steady in the face of intricate clockwork, felt a subtle flutter. The summons to the Sultan's private chambers was no ordinary honor. It carried the weight of the empire itself. Here, behind thick carved doors, history was made and destinies shaped. He was ushered in. The chamber was richly appointed, draped with silks in deep blues and golds. Sultan Mehmed IV reclined on a low divan, his expression serene yet commanding. Beside him rested a clock unlike any Yusuf had seen, its face inlaid with mother of pearl and precious. He gestured to the ornate clock beside him. "This timepiece has accompanied me since my youth. It reminds me that no power, however great, can escape the steady march of time." Yusuf nodded in understanding, the weight of those words settling in his mind. After a moment, the Sultan's voice softened, becoming almost conspiratorial. "There is a secret, Master Yusuf, a hidden mechanism buried deep within the palace archives. Legend tells of a clockmaker who once created a device that could influence not only the hours, but the fate of the empire itself." The Sultan's eyes bore into Yusuf's. "I believe you are that clockmaker. Your work is more than mechanics. It holds the potential to shape destiny." Yusuf felt the gravity of the moment crush his breath. The clock he had been crafting, a tribute to memory and time, now carried a destiny far beyond his dreams or fears. The Sultan's gaze softened. "Your creation will be the key to preserving the Empire's soul. But be warned, such power invites shadows. Yusuf bowed, the silence between them heavy yet charged. I accept this trust, Your Majesty. I will craft this clock with the utmost care and devotion. As Yusuf left the chamber, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows through the palace gardens. The city below sparkled like a constellation, alive with the countless stories of its people. Walking through the courtyard, Yusuf pondered the weight of his task. Could his hands, accustomed to the delicate turning of gears and springs, truly shape the fate of an empire? The question echoed in his mind as night settled over Constantinople. Outside, the Bosphorus whispered ancient secrets, its waters reflecting the stars that blinked awake in the darkening sky. Yusuf's path was no longer simply one of craft. It was intertwined with the very pulse of history itself. Chapter 10. The Dance of Shadows. The sun dipped behind the domes and minarets of Constantinople, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the ancient stones. The city exhaled a cool evening breeze, scented faintly with rose and spices, as lanterns flickered to life in winding alleys and palace courtyards. Within the heart of the Topkapi Palace, the shadows danced more deliberately, weaving secrets and whispered intrigues beneath gilded ceilings and beneath the watchful gaze of the Sultan's guards. Yusuf Efendi returned to his workshop with a cautious step, the weight of the Sultan's secret lingering like a shadow in his thoughts. The task entrusted to him was no longer merely a craftsman's duty. It was a responsibility that pulsed with the fragile tension between light and darkness, power and vulnerability. As he entered, Evren looked up from his workbench, his youthful face lined with concern. "Master, the palace feels different these days. There are murmurs in the halls, whispers of unrest, and shadows that move without form." Yusuf nodded, the weight of those words settling deep within. The Empire is a living thing, Evren. Its light casts shadows. Our work must honour both, the brilliance and the darkness intertwined. They worked through the night, the rhythmic ticking of clocks mingling with the distant echo of footsteps in the palace corridors. Yusuf's hands moved with practiced precision, assembling tiny gears etched with delicate arabesques, patterns inspired by the intricate tilework of the Blue Mosque. Outside, the city breathed in the quiet tension of uncertainty. The streets, once vibrant with the laughter of children and the chatter of merchants, now held a hush, as if Constantinople itself was holding its breath. In the solitude of the workshop, Yusuf allowed his mind to wander through memories and fears. The clock was not merely a measure of hours, it was a beacon, a talisman meant to preserve hope even as shadows gathered. Evren broke the silence, his voice soft. "Master, how do we protect something so fragile as hope?" Yusuf paused, the delicate gear resting between his fingers. "By remembering what gives us strength, our stories, our history, the bonds that tie us together. This clock must carry that spirit." The night deepened, but their work was far from over. The dance of shadows was endless, yet within the ticking heart of the clock, there was a promise that even in darkness, light endures. Chapter 11. The Silent Watcher. The city of Constantinople stirred in the pre-dawn hush, its narrow streets still cloaked in shadows and silence. The first pale fingers of light brushed against the towering minarets, softening the hard edges of stone walls that had witnessed centuries of triumph and turmoil. Yet, amidst the quiet, a presence watched, a silent guardian veiled in mystery and purpose. Yusuf Efendi had come to know that in a city as alive and intricate as Constantinople, not all watches were by clock or by man. Some were hidden, silent, unseen, but no less vital. As the clock's blueprint lay open on the table, Yusuf's thoughts turned to the whispered warnings from palace corridors, the veiled threats and subtle glances hinting at unseen forces moving against him. The Sultan's secret was not just a trust, but a burden that carried shadows darker than any night. Evren entered the workshop, his youthful enthusiasm tempered by a new seriousness. "Master, I have heard whispers. People speak of spies, of men who watch from the shadows. They say the clock's design is coveted by many." Yusuf nodded gravely. "Power often comes wrapped in danger, Evren. The clock is more than a machine. It is a symbol, a key to the Empire's soul. Such things attract those who seek control." They worked together through the morning, their hands steady, though their minds were heavy. Yusuf taught Evren the delicate balance of gears, how the smallest piece affected the whole, just as a whispered word could change the course of a kingdom. ... Outside, Constantinople awoke slowly. Fishermen prepared their boats by the Bosphorus. Merchants arranged spices in vibrant piles, and the call to prayer echoed softly through the mist. Life moved on, oblivious to the currents of shadow and intrigue swirling beneath. In the afternoon, a visitor arrived at the workshop, a scholar from the palace archives, known for his discretion and deep knowledge of ancient lore. He carried with him a scroll, ancient and fragile, detailing mechanisms thought lost to time. "Master Yusuf," the scholar said quietly, "within these pages lies knowledge that may aid your work. It speaks of a mechanism that records not just hours, but moments. Moments that shape history itself." Yusuf's eyes brightened. "Then our clock will be more than time. It will be memory, legacy." As the day faded into twilight, Yusuf stood by the window, watching the city lights reflect in the Bosphorus. The clock's silent watcher, the unseen force of fate, had become part of his journey. And though shadows loomed, he felt a steady resolve. The city held its breath, waiting for the moment when past and future would intertwine within the ticking heart of the clock. Chapter 12: The Weaver of Time. In the soft glow of dawn, the workshop was alive with quiet purpose. Yusuf Efendi moved gracefully among his tools and scattered parts, a master weaver stitching together the fabric of time itself. Each gear, spring and lever was more than metal. It was a thread in a tapestry that spanned centuries, woven with care and reverence. Evren watched intently, absorbing every lesson, his hands steady as he assembled delicate components under Yusuf's watchful eye. The apprentice was becoming more than a student. He was a partner in the dance of creation. Outside, Constantinople awakened in vibrant bursts of colour and sound. The call to prayer resonated from the minarets, mingling with the cries of street vendors and the laughter of children chasing one another beneath archways. Yusuf paused, tracing the curves of an intricate gear patterned with the Ottoman tulip motif. This symbol, blooming in repeated patterns, was a testament to life's fleeting beauty and eternal cycle. Time, Yusuf said softly, is not simply measured in seconds or minutes. It is woven from moments, each connected like threads in a grand tapestry. Evren nodded, a spark of understanding lighting his eyes. And this clock, it will be the loom upon which those threads come together. 0. He paused, tracing the curves of an intricate gear patterned with the Ottoman tulip motif. This symbol, blooming in repeated patterns, was a testament to life's fleeting beauty and eternal cycle. Evren nodded, a spark of understanding lighting his eyes. And this clock, it will be the loom upon which those threads come together. Very possible. Heralded mobs of ordinary trade will be prosperous prites. Yusuf, an eclectic character. And awed that Yusuf came to be. The task was daunting. They sought to create a mechanism that could capture not just the steady passage of hours, but the essence of time's fluidity, its ability to hold memories, hopes, and fears within its silent march. Muzaffar Hoka visited again, bringing with him ancient texts and celestial charts. He spoke of the intricate patterns of the stars and planets, how their movements shaped calendars, rituals, and lives. Look beyond the mechanics, he urged. See the rhythm of the heavens, the cycles of nature. Your clock must honor these, reflecting both the cosmos and the human heart. Inspired, Yusuf and Evren designed a delicate orrery, a miniature model of the solar system, integrated into the clock's mechanism. It would spin silently, marking not just hours, but the eternal dance of planets. As days turned to weeks, the workshop became a place where science and art converged, where history whispered through every cog and wheel. One evening, Yusuf shared a story from his youth, a tale of a weaver in a distant village who could create tapestries so intricate they seemed alive. He taught me that time is not just to be counted, but to be felt, experienced, and cherished. Evren listened closely, the story etching itself into his heart. The clock, slowly coming to life, was more than a machine. It was a bridge, connecting past and future, memory and hope, the fleeting and the eternal. As the stars emerged in the night sky, Yusuf looked out over Constantinople, the city of 1,000 stories, each one a thread in the grand tapestry of time. And within his workshop, the weaver of time continued his delicate work, weaving moments into history. Chapter 13. The Hourglass of Fate. The heat of the midday sun shimmered over Constantinople's terracotta rooftops as Yusuf Efendi prepared to meet a visitor whose arrival stirred both curiosity and unease. News had reached the palace of a mysterious traveller, a merchant from distant lands who claimed to possess an ancient hourglass with powers that transcended mere timekeeping. The visitor's caravan had passed through the city's bustling markets, trading silks, spices, and stories. Now, the man sought an audience with Yusuf, hoping that the famed clockmaker might unlock the secrets held within the delicate sands of his hourglass. The workshop smelled of cedar and oil as Yusuf welcomed the stranger inside. The man was tall and lean, his eyes dark and sharp, wrapped in a cloak embroidered with unfamiliar symbols. From beneath his cloak, he produced an hourglass unlike any Yusuf had seen before. The glass was tinted with a faint amber hue, and the sands shimmered with a soft golden light, falling with a hypnotic, almost otherworldly rhythm. This, the traveller said, voice low and steady, is not merely a vessel for measuring time. It is said to hold the fate of those who possess it. Yusuf studied the hourglass, feeling a strange energy pulse from its core. The traveller spoke of legends, stories of how the hourglass could bend moments, granting glimpses into the future, or allowing a brief rewinding of past events. Such power, he warned, came with great risk. Evren, standing nearby, watched with wide eyes. Master, if such a thing exists, could it be part of the clock we build? Could it hold the memory we seek? Yusuf considered the question carefully. The clock they crafted was meant to be a keeper of time's passage, a monument to memory and legacy. But the hourglass hinted at something more profound, the delicate balance between fate and free will. For days, Yusuf examined the hourglass, drawing parallels with his own mechanisms. He found inspiration in its design, the slender neck through which time itself seemed to flow, the way grains of sand mirrored moments slipping through human lives. Yet the traveller's warning lingered in his mind. Power over time was a double-edged sword. To tamper with fate was to risk unraveling the delicate threads that held the world together. In quiet moments, Yusuf shared his reflections with Evren. We must build with care, honouring the natural order. The clock must be a guardian, not a master. The workshop hummed with renewed energy as they incorporated elements inspired by the hourglass. A subtle nod to the flow of moments, the inevitability of change, and the preciousness of every grain of time. Outside, Constantinople thrived, its streets alive with merchants, scholars, and travellers. The city itself was a crossroads of fate, where countless stories intersected like the flowing sands of an eternal hourglass. As night fell and lanterns glowed softly against the darkened sky, Yusuf felt the weight of his task more keenly than ever. The clock he built was not just a device, it was a promise to honour the past, embrace the present, and cautiously look toward the future. Chapter 14. Whispers in the Courtyard. The moon hung low and silver over Constantinople, bathing the ancient city in a soft, ethereal glow. In the quiet courtyards of Topkapi Palace, shadows stretched long and mysterious, weaving through marble columns and fragrant orange trees. The air was thick with the scent of night-blooming jasmine and distant sea salt, mingling with whispers that travelled like silk threads through the stillness. Yusuf Efendi stepped softly into the courtyard. His cloak wrapped tightly around him against the cool night air. His mind was restless, stirred by the weight of the hourglass's secrets and the Sultan's charge. The task before him had grown larger than he had imagined. No longer simply a clockmaker, he was now a guardian of fate itself. The courtyard's mosaic tiles gleamed underfoot, each piece a fragment of centuries-old stories, tales of sultans and poets, traders and travellers who had passed through this city that straddled worlds. Here, time felt both eternal and fragile, a paradox that Yusuf understood deeply. as he moved toward a quiet alcove, a familiar voice called softly from the shadows. "Master Yusuf." Evren emerged, his eyes alert beneath the soft glow of an oil lamp. "There are whispers tonight. The palace is restless." Yusuf nodded. "Whispers are the breath of the unseen, Evren. We must listen carefully, for sometimes the smallest voice carries the greatest truth." They spoke in hushed tones as they circled the courtyard, the flickering lamps casting dancing shadows on carved stone walls. News had come of secret meetings, of courtiers weaving alliances in dark corners, and of rival factions vying for power in a city already brimming with intrigue. Yusuf's thoughts drifted to the clock's mechanism, the intricate balance of gears and springs, designed not only to mark time, but to echo the delicate dance of the empire itself. Just as every piece in the clock depended on others to function, so too did the fate of the empire rely on countless unseen threads. A soft breeze stirred the leaves, carrying a hint of jasmine and a whisper of danger. "Master," Evren said cautiously, "do you think the cock might be a target? That those who fear its power will try to claim or destroy it?" Yusuf's gaze sharpened. "Power is often a double-edged sword, but the clock is more than power. It is a symbol of hope, a promise that time itself is a witness to our lives and legacies." They made their way toward the palace library, a sanctuary of scrolls and knowledge. Inside, Muzaffar Hoka awaited them, his eyes reflecting the flickering lamplight. He unfolded a delicate parchment, revealing diagrams and ancient script. "The celestial patterns shift," Muzaffar said gravely. "A time of change approaches. The stars themselves whisper warnings, and the hourglass is but one thread in a larger tapestry." Yusuf studied the charts, noting the cycles of Jupiter and Saturn, planets long associated with destiny and transformation. These cosmic dances echoed the human dramas unfolding beneath the palace domes. "Then we must weave carefully," Yusuf replied. "Our work is not just of mechanics, but of balance, between light and shadow, fate and free will." Gaze turned to nights as the city breathed beneath the watchful gaze of stars. The clock took shape, its gears turning with quiet purpose, the orreries spinning slowly to mark celestial rhythms. Each detail was infused with meaning, from the delicate floral engravings inspired by Ottoman art to the subtle incorporation of the hourglass's amber sands. One evening, Yusuf found himself alone in the courtyard, the city's heartbeat echoing faintly in the distance. He traced the worn stones beneath his feet, remembering Layla's laughter and the promise of time's gentle passage. "Time is a gift," he whispered to the night, "and a teacher. It shows us both what was and what might be." As the first call to prayer echoed through the city, Yusuf felt a renewed sense of purpose. The clock was no longer merely his creation. It was a living testament to the empire's soul, a beacon in uncertain times. And beneath the eternal stars, whispers in the courtyard wove a song of hope, shadow, and the unyielding march of time. Chapter 15: The Unveiling and the Shadows. A delicate mist curled over Constantinople as dawn's first light painted the city in soft hues of pink and gold. The city stirred awake, its streets humming with merchants setting out their wares, children darting between market stalls, and the distant calls of muezzins echoing from minarets. Yet beneath this lively surface, an undercurrent of unease rippled quietly, like the restless currents beneath the Bosphorus Strait. Inside his workshop, Yusuf Efendi stood before the clock he had poured years into crafting. Its intricate gears shimmered softly under the morning light, the orrery's tiny planets poised in their celestial dance. Each cog, every delicate mechanism, whispered the history of the empire, its glories and its fragile hopes. The gentle ticking filled the room like a heartbeat, steady yet pulsing with significance. Evren entered, clutching a scroll stamped with the Sultan's seal. His youthful face was sober, the weight of responsibility pressing down even on his bright eyes. "Master, the Sultan requests your presence at the palace. Tonight, the clock is to be unveiled before the court." Yusuf nodded, a mixture of pride and apprehension stirring within him. This moment was no longer simply about craftsmanship. It was about legacy, power, and the uncertain future that awaited both the clock and the empire it represented. As twilight descended, the grand courtyard of Topkapi Palace came alive, with lanterns casting pools of golden light over marble fountains and fragrant gardens. Nobles, scholars, and dignitaries gathered, their voices a tapestry of anticipation and whispered speculation. Sultan Mehmed IV appeared, regal and composed, his gaze sweeping across the assembly before settling on Yusuf. "Tonight," he proclaimed, "we witness the birth of a marvel, a clock that unites science and art, history and destiny. It is a symbol of our empire's enduring spirit." With steady hands, Yusuf unveiled the clock. Gasps of admiration rippled through the crowd as the orrery began its silent revolution, planets tracing perfect arcs in the miniature cosmos. The delicate gears clicked rhythmically, and the clock's face, adorned with Ottoman floral patterns and celestial symbols, seemed to glow with quiet majesty. "This clock," Yusuf addressed the assembly, voice clear and resonant, "is more than a device to mark hours. It is a vessel of memory, a keeper of our shared history, and a beacon for the future we strive to build." But the grandeur of the moment was pierced by a sudden shadow. A figure slipped near the edge of the gathering, moving with swift and furtive steps. Palace guards reacted instantly, intercepting the intruder before any alarm could be sounded. The rival courtier, known for his ambition and envy, sought to seize the clock for his own designs. The crowd held its breath, tension crackling like static. Sultan Mehmed's voice rang out, firm and unwavering. "This clock belongs to the empire and to all who honor its legacy." Order returned, but the undercurrent of danger lingered. Yusuf felt the fragile symbol he had crafted stand as a testament not only to time, but to the precarious balance of power and trust. Later, as the courtyard emptied and stars blossomed in the velvet night, Yusuf and Evren stood side by side, their thoughts heavy yet resolute. "The clock has passed its first trial," Yusuf murmured, gazing upward. "But the path ahead remains uncertain." Evren's eyes shone with determination. "We have more to protect and to build, Master. The clock is only the beginning." The city breathed around them, alive with countless stories and hidden shadows. The hands of the clock turned steadily forward, marking not an end, but a new chapter, one filled with promise, challenge, and the enduring mystery of time itself. Chapter 16. Threads of Intrigue. The morning sun filtered softly through the latticed windows of Topkapi Palace, casting geometric patterns across the marble floors. Within these ancient walls, power whispered in shadowed corners, and the delicate threads of allegiance and rivalry wove a tapestry as intricate as any clockwork. Yusuf Efendi entered the Sultan's council chamber, where the air was thick with the scent of rosewater and tobacco. Courtiers and advisors exchanged subtle glances, their faces masks of courteous civility. But Yusuf sensed the undercurrents beneath, the silent jockeying for favour and influence. Evren trailed close behind, his eyes sharp with a newfound awareness. The young apprentice had begun to understand that the palace was a different kind of workshop, one where words could be as sharp as blades and trust as fragile as spun glass. The Sultan greeted Yusuf with a grave nod. "The clock has drawn more attention than I anticipated. There are those who see it as a symbol and as a prize." Muzaffar Hoka appeared beside Yusuf, unfolding a parchment filled with coded script and diagrams. "The hourglass returned last night," he whispered. The traveller left a message, warnings veiled in riddles. Yusuf took the parchment, his gaze tracing the cryptic symbols. "They speak of balance," he murmured, "of time's fragile weave. We must be cautious." Outside the council chamber, whispers followed Yusuf like shadows. A rival courtier, Enver Bey, watched from a distance, his eyes dark with ambition. He had long coveted influence over the Sultan's decisions, and saw the clock as a key to unlocking his own ascent. In the bustling palace corridors, Evren intercepted a hushed conversation, voices laced with suspicion and veiled threats. "The clock is more than metal and gears," one voice hissed. "It could change the very fabric of power." Yusuf and Evren returned to the workshop. The familiar scent of cedar and oil, a brief refuge from the palace's intrigues. Yet even here, tension seeped into the air. "We are at a crossroads," Yusuf said quietly. "Our creation holds hope, but also danger. We must guard it with both skill and wisdom." Evren nodded. "I will watch the shadows, Master." The clock's secret is not ours alone. As night fell over Constantinople, the city's minarets cast long silhouettes against a star-studded sky. Somewhere in the depths of the palace, unseen forces moved, weaving plans that could either protect or imperil the clock and all it symbolized. Yusuf closed his eyes, listening to the distant call to prayer. Time moved onward, relentless, indifferent. Yet within its flow, the fate of an empire and the legacy of a master clockmaker hung in delicate balance. Chapter 17. Secrets of the Mechanism. The flickering glow of oil lamps illuminated the quiet workshop, casting long shadows across the walls lined with tools and blueprints. Yusuf Efendi and Evren sat bent over the clock, their eyes tracing the delicate patterns of gears and celestial engravings. Weeks of painstaking labour had brought them to this point. The clock was no longer merely a device to mark time, but a repository of secrets and symbols, each component carefully designed to mirror the cosmos and the fate entwined with it. Muzaffar Hoka entered quietly, carrying a fragile scroll from the palace library. "I have deciphered portions of the ancient manuscript," he announced softly. "It speaks of a hidden chamber within the clock, a mechanism tied to celestial cycles and ancient prophecies. Yusuf's fingers hovered over the clock's surface, feeling the subtle hum beneath the polished brass. A secret chamber, he mused. Could this be the heart of the clock's power? Evren's eyes gleamed with curiosity. What could it contain? A message? A key? Muzaffar nodded. Possibly both. The text warns that the chamber must be opened only when the stars align, lest fate itself be disturbed. Together, they examined the clock's intricate engravings, floral motifs blending seamlessly with celestial symbols, Ottoman artistry entwined with ancient science. A hidden latch revealed its... The chamber opened slowly, revealing a small compartment housing a crystal orb, etched with star maps and delicate runes. The orb shimmered faintly, reflecting light like a distant star captured in glass. This, Yusuf whispered, is more than a clockwork component. It is a cosmic map, a guide to the Empire's destiny, encoded in time. Days passed as they studied the orb and ancient manuscripts, piecing together the prophecy woven into the clock's design. It spoke of cycles of renewal and peril, of a time when fate would hinge on choices yet to be made. But knowledge brought weight. Yusuf found himself wrestling with the burden of understanding. The clock was no longer a mere tribute to time. It was a gatekeeper of destiny. Evren watched his master with growing respect. We carry a heavy responsibility, he said, not just as clockmakers, but as guardians of time's secrets. Yusuf nodded. We must balance science and faith, craft and caution. The clock is a bridge between past and future, seen and unseen. Outside, Constantinople bustled with life, its streets a mosaic of cultures and stories, each moment slipping like grains of sand through the hourglass of history. As night fell, Yusuf gazed at the stars, the crystal orb blowing softly beside him. Time's mysteries stretched infinitely before them, an eternal dance of light and shadow, fate and free will. Chapter 18. Shadows over Constantinople. The city's vibrant streets, once filled with the hopeful chatter of merchants and the calls of street vendors, had grown tense under a veil of suspicion. Constantinople, the jewel of the Ottoman Empire, was no stranger to unrest, but whispers of rebellion and unrest now stirred beneath the surface like a gathering storm. Yusuf Efendi's workshop, nestled in a quiet corner away from the bustling bazaars, had become both sanctuary and battleground. Late into the night, the rhythmic ticking of the clock was interrupted by sharp knocks and furtive shadows lurking at the edge of lantern light. One evening, as Yusuf examined delicate gears, a sudden crash echoed from the adjacent room. Evren rushed in, eyes wide with alarm. "Master! Someone has tried to break in!" Together they found signs of forced entry, a toppled shelf, tools scattered like fallen soldiers. The attempt to sabotage their work was no accident. It was a message, a threat against the legacy they had vowed to protect. Yusuf's face hardened with resolve. We must be vigilant. The clock is more than a mechanism. It is a symbol that others wish to control or destroy. Evren nodded, now more than an apprentice, his youthful innocence tempered by the gravity of their mission. Days later, a clandestine meeting unfolded beneath the moonlit arches of the palace courtyard. Yusuf, Evren, and Muzaffar Hoka met with trusted allies. Scholars, loyal courtiers, and even a seasoned spy whose loyalty to the Empire was unquestioned. "The Empire stands at a crossroads," the spy whispered, eyes scanning for eavesdroppers. "Factions within the palace plot to use the clock's power for their own gain." Muzaffar unfurled the ancient scroll once more. The prophecy warns of this. The delicate balance between light and shadow, creation and destruction. Yusuf's voice was steady, resolute. Then we must be the guardians of that balance. The clock is not a weapon, but a promise of continuity, of hope. As the city slept beneath a canopy of stars, Yusuf and his allies prepared to face the encroaching darkness. The path ahead was fraught with peril. But within the fragile ticking of the clock lay the enduring heartbeat of an empire's soul. Chapter 19: The Hourglass's Gift. The first light of dawn seeped softly through the arched windows of Yusuf Efendi's workshop, casting a pale glow on the polished brass and wood that made up the magnificent clock. Despite the fragile calm of morning, an electric tension hummed in the air. A tension born from secrets yet to be revealed. The traveller returned. Evren was the first to notice the figure standing silently at the entrance. Tall, cloaked, the same eyes, dark and piercing as before. The ancient hourglass, the one said to hold the power over fate, was cradled carefully in the traveller's hands, its amber sands glowing faintly. "Master Yusuf," the traveller spoke, voice low and measured, "I bring not only the hourglass, but a message, a choice that lies before you." Yusuf stepped forward, his gaze steady yet wary. "Speak, stranger. The hourglass's power is not to be taken lightly." The traveller's eyes gleamed in the dim light. The sands within hold more than time. They hold the essence of possibility, the chance to glimpse. The traveller unfurled a delicate scroll inscribed with celestial maps and warnings. Use the hourglass with care. To wield its power is to stand at the edge of destiny itself. Days turned to nights as Yusuf, Evren, and Muzaffar studied the hourglass, integrating its symbolism cautiously into the clock's design. The crystal orb within the clock seemed to pulse in response, as if awakening to a new purpose. Yet, Yusuf wrestled with the moral weight of their discovery. If we interfere with fate, do we become masters of time or prisoners of hubris? Evren, his youthful certainty tempered by experience, answered softly. Perhaps true mastery lies in knowing when to let time flow unaltered. Her city pulsed outside with life. Yusuf found solace in moments of quiet reflection, watching the stars that had guided his craft and inspired his hopes. The hourglass's sands continued to fall, marking not just hours, but the fragile threads upon which the Empire's future hung. Chapter 20: The Final Hour. The grand hall of Topkapi Palace gleamed under the light of hundreds of lanterns, each flame flickering like a star caught in a delicate web. Tonight, the city held its breath, and the Empire's fate seemed to hang upon the slender hands of a clock whose ticking echoed through the very soul of Constantinople. Nobles, scholars, and dignitaries gathered, their silks whispering in the cool evening air. The scent of jasmine and rosewater mingled with the murmur of anticipation. Weaving through the marble columns and arched ceilings, at the heart of the hall stood Yusuf Efendi, robes flowing and eyes bright with a mixture of humility and resolve. Beside him, Evrin adjusted the final components of the clock, now complete in all its intricate glory, a masterpiece blending celestial orrery, ancient prophecy, and the delicate hourglass's legacy. Sultan Mehmed IV stepped forward, his voice steady and commanding. Tonight, we witness not just a marvel of craft, but a symbol of time's passage, of the endurance of our empire, and of hope in uncertain days. Yusuf lifted the clock's glass dome, revealing the shining crystal orb that pulsed softly, echoing the rhythm of the amber sands in the hourglass. The orrery began its slow, graceful rotation, planets circling with cosmic precision. The gears clicked in harmonious chorus, each movement a note in an eternal symphony. A hush fell over the assembly as the clock's face shimmered, revealing hidden inscriptions, verses from ancient poets, prayers whispered by generations past, and celestial maps charting futures yet to unfold. Yet, it was not just the clock's mechanical perfection that held the room captive. It was the story it told, of an empire that had weathered storms, embraced knowledge, and dreamed boldly into the unknown. In that moment, the prophecy was fulfilled, not with the crash of thunder or the flash of conquest, but with quiet dignity and enduring light. As the final chime resonated, Sultan Mehmed IV raised his hand in blessing. Let this clock be a guardian of our past, a guide for our present, and a beacon for the future. The crowd erupted in applause, but Yusuf's gaze was distant, reflecting on the journey, the trials, the sacrifices, and the fragile balance between fate and free will. Evrin stepped beside him, eyes shining. Master, what comes next? Yusuf smiled gently. We become the keepers of time, the storytellers who honor those who came before and inspire those who follow. Outside, the city's lights twinkled beneath a canopy of stars, timeless and eternal. Constantinople breathed, alive with countless stories, each moment a grain of sand in the hourglass of history. The clock's hands moved onward, steady and sure, marking not just hours, but the endless passage of hope, memory, and legacy. And so, another tale fades into the quiet of the night. If you've enjoyed the journey, let the echoes of time carry you into peaceful dreams. We are the Night Travelers, always guiding you through stories woven in starlight. Until next time, traveler, sleep well,